And so Brian Shaw, he's a blueberry muffin. He ain't no chocolate chip. Look at him.
17.6.
That's what I'm talking about.
It's not 17.6% body fat. Everyone knows that my laser eyes are the most accurate form of body fat testing, well, other than the MRI, but MRIs cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so it's not really accessible. He does his body fat testing underwater and comes out with a number, and so let's get into the comments. Greg is the one who says hydrostatic is the most accurate, and so let me address this. Hydrostatic weighing is in fact very accurate for most people. The problem is, does Brian Shaw look like most people? The guy is an animal monster, 6'8", 400 pounds. Now, when they did hydrostatic weighing, it's a predictive equation. They took in a bunch of people, thousands of people. They measured their body fat compared to how much fat they actually had, and they developed an equation. Now, the problem is Brian Shaw is an outlier, and so the predictive equation did not factor in men of that size. And so for the people out there who don't understand, imagine this. You have a recipe. That recipe is an equation, and the recipe you have is for making chocolate chip muffins. Now, that recipe works really well for most people. Anytime you're trying to make chocolate chip muffins, it's going to work. But what if you change that up? What if you now want to make blueberry muffins? When you add the blueberries in, it's going to drip out and it's going to make some more liquid. And so perhaps you need some more flour, some more guar gum, xanthan gum, and so on. And so Brian Shaw, he's a blueberry muffin. He ain't no chocolate chip. Look at him. The predictive equation, the recipe, it's quite accurate for most people. You know, people perhaps they're 200 pounds, 120 pounds, 250 pounds. But when you get a guy who's 400 pounds, it's no longer accurate. Do you not remember when he went and did a Dexa scan? Do you remember his body fat back then? It was over 25%. He couldn't even fit in the machine. And so how could it accurately test his body fat if he couldn't even fit in the machine?
Hydrostatic weighing, it will be better than the Dexa scan that we did last time.
And so of course it's better than the Dexa scan. Y'all think the Dexa scan is the holy grail of body fat testing? It's literally the MRI scan. But the problem with the MRI scan is so expensive. Dexa scan can be very inaccurate. Brian Shaw, he noticed this in 1 month. He lost almost 30 pounds of muscle, but obviously he hadn't. It was just the Dexa scan. He never fitted it properly.
Okay. 6 weeks till I win again.
And so they're going to have a competition between them. I have no idea how she's going to win. In this transformation, Brian Shaw is 400 pounds. She's already looks to be in amazing shape. How can she possibly win? She already is more shredded than last time.
So it's underwater weighing, considered the gold standard in body fat testing.
So notice how she states hydrostatic weighing is considered the golden standard in body fat testing. And also notice when you go and use a Dexa scan, the people working there say the Dexa scan is the golden standard. But yet everyone knows my laser eyes are the golden standard. However, the MRI, it's actually the real golden standard. I'm actually lying. I'm not more accurate than an MRI machine. I'm perhaps better than a Dexa scan or hydrostatic weighing, but the MRI, that is the true golden standard. And so before we get into this, let me try and predict what body fat percentage is. As you can see, standing on the scale, she has a six-pack. You can see her abdominals, visible abs. This is very lean. Her body fat, in my estimation, is somewhere between 20 and 22% body fat. She has more body fat in her hips. She seems to be leaner in the stomach, but this is very athletic, very healthy. Clearly below 25% body fat, which is what an average healthy woman should have. Anywhere between 18 and 22%, that to me is elite level athlete body fat percentage. And so I do believe she's in that range.
Does anybody like right now like do nutrition, like count macros or calories or anything like that? Are you guys?
And so imagine asking the world's strongest man if he knows about macros, counting calories, and so on. Of course he does. He knows more than 99% of the population. And so I do believe the tester is underestimating just how much Brian knows about nutrition.
Blow, Carrie. Blow. So see how she's not really blowing down there?
Okay, and so we watched her first attempt. You're supposed to blow out all your air. Notice she blows out her air for 3 seconds, plugs her nose, and lays under the water. You have to continue to expel all your air. You have to contract your abs. You have to blow as if your life depends on it. Every bit of air left in your body is going to make you float. And the heavier you are underwater, the more the equation is going to predict how lean you actually are. And so clearly she's going to have to try again. She did not expel all her air. Her body fat is going to be an overestimation. And so remember, the machine is only as accurate as the person doing the testing. And not only that, when you're a 400-pound man, such as Brian Shaw, that predictive equation, it's less accurate than last time.
There, she's blonde. That a girl. Blow!
After round 2, she did a little bit better, but I do believe she's still a little bit nervous. Remember, I've done this testing in the past, and the majority of people, they're very scared to blow out all your air. Think of it. You're underwater, you're blowing out all your air. How many people, when you go underwater, hold no breath? You hold your breath, you go... But it's the opposite. And you have to continue to blow perhaps 5 or 10 seconds in order to get every little bit of air out.
I'm hoping around 20.
20.8.
Yay, okay, cool.
And so they asked her, what percent do you think you are? She guesses 20. And what was the result? 20.8. And so perhaps she has laser eyes herself. She was within 1% of what she thought she was. Very, very accurate. Glad to see people who have an accurate representation of how much body fat they actually have. She clearly does not have body dysmorphia. She's in a bikini. She's in the body fat testing. Great for her. Happy to see.
So you're sitting at 19.6.
19.6%. And so remember, the more air you can expel, the more shredded you're going to be. 19.6%. This woman is very lean. Based on the front, I would have said she's slightly above 20%. She does have a six-pack. She does appear to have some fat or hips, but I did not see her back. You can't accurately predict someone's body fat by only seeing half of their body. You see the front, the back, the top, and the bottom. And so she stands up. You can see her legs are actually quite lean. She does have visible quads. You've seen her abs. And so this woman, very lean, sub 20% body fat, very lean female, very athletic. And final result, after trying harder than last time, getting rid of all that air, 18.9%, very, very lean. And Brian Shaw walking out, you could see some abs coming through, doing a front double bicep, looking pretty good for being 400 pounds. I'm very surprised to see him this lean. But from the side, you do see some fat, especially in this area around the stomach. This is typical of men who carry more of an apple shape. And remember, we can't see all of the visceral fat, the fat that's underneath the surface, more around the organs. You're seeing more subcutaneous fat. That is clearly more visible. In my estimation, he's probably around 25% body fat. If he were to be perhaps under 20% body fat, I do believe you'd see more abs, you would see less fat on his back. But at 400 pounds, imagine this, at 25% body fat, that would mean 75% of him is actually lean body tissue. That would mean he has 300 pounds of lean tissue. That means if he were to diet down and get to 0% body fat, he would be 300 pounds on stage. But seeing as most people get down to perhaps 5% body fat at best, he'll be perhaps 315 pounds on stage. Imagine a shredded 315-pound Brian Shaw competing in a bodybuilding competition. And so as you can see, as he's pouring the water into the toilet, he clearly has a lot of body fat, especially in the lower back area and the back. There is some significant amounts of fat being deposited. To me, this is slightly overweight. I'm not going to say he's obese, but he's perhaps approaching 25% body fat. And attempt number 1 to fail. He blew out all his air, went underwater, and he couldn't hold it. Remember, this is harder than it looks. If you haven't tried this before, it's very unnerving to blow out all your air and then go underwater because you then want to breathe. You have to blow out all your air and hold that breath, which is not actually breath because there is no air in your body, and hold it for at least 2 seconds so she can get the weight to accurately represent his body fat percentage.
I think I can get out more air.
And so his first reaction we got is, I thought I could get out more air. Absolutely. When you blow out all your air, what typically happens is you're laying flat on the ground. Notice how his head was not laying completely back. Once you blow out all your air, your body gets heavier because the air is literally helping you to float. When the air is expelled, you should be sinking towards the bottom. And the lower your body fat percentage, the easier it should be to lay on the floor. When I go to my swimming pool in the summertime and I blow out some of my air, I can lay flat on the floor. Why? Because I have sub 10% body fat. I can hold my breath for perhaps 20 seconds and lay flat on the ground. And why? Because with some air in my lungs, I'm still more dense than water. Therefore, I float to the bottom. If I had a higher percent body fat, for example, 20% body fat, I would be floating easier than last time. And so if you're very lean, you know this. If you go into the pool and you let out some of your air, you're going to sink to the bottom. If you cannot sink to the bottom, it means your body fat percentage is probably much higher than 10%.
What are you hoping for?
I would think, it's under 20 for sure.
And so they asked Body Fat the same question as his wife. Hey, what body fat percentage you are? He's quite confidently saying, I'm under 20%. I really believe that world's strongest men athletes underestimate how much body fat they have. Even Mitchell Hooper, when I tested him with the calipers, had close to 30%.
I'm guessing 22.
And what do you think I'm going to say?
I have no idea, man.
He has no idea. I'm going with 30% body fat.
Wow.
I simply think people have no clue what body fat looks on people in the real world. For the most part, most people underestimate by at least 5%. And so if Brian believes he's most likely close to 20%, he's probably closer to 25%.
Oh, that was over a percent. 18.3.
Okay.
This predictive equation, it's more inaccurate than last time. There is no way this is 18.3%. I'm sorry, but this is not close to the ideal body fat percentage for a man. Remember, 15% is ideal for health and so on, longevity. There's no way that at 385 pounds and 18.3% body fat, that he only has to lose about 10 pounds of body fat to be at his ideal weight. Remember, he's 385 pounds. That is a lot of weight. And I'm not saying he doesn't have a ton of muscle. He clearly does. But there's no way possible, I would bet my life and your life, everyone's life on it, that he's anywhere near 18% body fat.
I've never seen that. I've never tested anybody as heavy as you in dry weight, but the lean pounds just is so cool to see.
And so remember this, she's never seen a lean body mass this high. And that is actually a negative towards the validity of this test. She's never tested anyone ever that had that much of a lean weight. And of course she hasn't. He's 6'8", he has this much muscle, and perhaps he's natural, perhaps he's not. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter!
But what does matter is the fact that you cannot predict a body fat percentage of a man who's 400 pounds simply by using underwater weighing. It's going to have some inaccuracies, and you can see that in these results.
You know, you want to always improve it or at least maintain it as you get older, and so...
She did mention that you don't want to see your muscle mass go down when you get older, but in some people you actually do. When you're a retired world's strongest man and you spent years weighing perhaps over 400 pounds, it's actually healthier to lose some of this muscle than to keep all that muscle. Remember, the heart doesn't care if it's 400 pounds from fat or 400 pounds from muscle. If you're 400 pounds, it's 400 pounds. The heart has to beat harder than last time. And so if Brian Shaw were to downsize, perhaps lose 50 or even 100 pounds, even if some of that is muscle, he's going to feel healthier. It's going to be less strain on his joints. He's going to feel better, move quicker. And so I'm certain that Brian Shaw's hearts, his joints, ligaments, tendons, bones would prefer that he were to get smaller. Just think of it. Being that big is amazing for moving very large objects. But he is a very large object and he has to move that every time he takes a step. And so by becoming a smaller version of himself, perhaps doing more cardio, less focused on building muscle, he will in fact get healthier. One supplement I would suggest for a man like Brian Shaw, who clearly does not need to build any more muscle, is GO2 Max. And why is that? Because it contains NMN. It can improve your cardio, your stamina, your endurance, your ability to work out harder than last time. Perhaps he's going for walks, he could walk further. Instead of walking a half an hour, you walk an hour. The more cardio you do, the more calories you burn, easier it is to be in a deficit, easier it is to lose weight. And so on this 6-week journey, this transformation challenge, if he were to use GO2 Max, he would have more endurance, stamina, he'd be able to exercise harder than last time, and that would help him on his journey.
17.6.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so the final results, 17.6% body fat. It's not 17.6% body fat. Now remember, I'm telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I want to say Brian Shaw is 17.6%. He has the proof. He's the one with the testing. And so he can say, well, Coach Greg's laser eyes are wrong. He's the one with the testing. But remember, he also had that Dexa scan result, which it was much higher. And so which golden standard do we want to use? Do we want to go by the hydrostatic weighing test or do we want to go by the Dexa scan? I'm telling you that they're both inaccurate and that my laser eyes are going to be that much better. I'm telling you he's close to 25% body fat. He's much closer to 25%. I would suggest for his own health, he drops about 10% body fat. 10% of close to 400 pounds, about 40 pounds. And so if he weighs 385, I'd suggest he gets down to 345. I then believe he would be at a very healthy weight for him. Does that mean he couldn't stand to lose any more? No, I don't think so. But if he dropped to 345 and was at 15% body fat, I think that would be amazing. Because as it stands, to get down to single-digit body fat, if he's 17.5%, he only needs to lose 7.6%. And so I did the math out. It equates to only losing 30 pounds. Does anyone think that if Brian Shaw lost 30 pounds, got down to 355, that he would have sub 10% body fat? Then he would have a shredded six-pack, perhaps veins in his abs. That he could flex his muscles and you'd see every bump and crevice in his back, his quads, and so on. I don't think so. And so oftentimes it's easier to guess a person's body fat by thinking, well, if they lost a certain amount of body fat, would they then be able to compete in a bodybuilding competition and be shredded? And if the answer is no, they clearly need to lose way more, then the answer is their body fat is probably a little bit higher. And so they're quite literally explaining the Dexa scan and how he went in to get the results. He had worked his ass off, was training harder than last time, doing everything right. And he went in and he said, yeah, you lost about 30 pounds of muscle. When clearly he did not. He looked at himself in the mirror and said, I look amazing. I've made major improvements. And so remember, don't rely on the number. Can you look in the mirror and do you feel better? Do you look better? Are you healthier? Can you walk further? Can you lift more weight? Let that be the judge. This is just a number. These numbers can be inaccurate, especially if you're an outlier, if you're 6'8", or perhaps you're 500 pounds. It's not going to be as accurate as the average person.
Typically, it's more acceptable for women to carry more body fat, so.
And she makes a great point. The average woman has 6 to 9% more essential fat than that of a man. And so if you're trying to compare body fat, men on average are going to be 6 to 9% lower than that of a woman. And so if a woman comes in at 19%, a man should be somewhere between 10 and 13% to look about the same in terms of their leanness. And so it's not really fair to say which of us is leaner, because it's much harder for a woman to drop below 18% body fat than that of a man. A man at 18% is actually slightly overweight. In comparison, a woman at 18% is very, very lean. That is the body fat percentage of an elite female athlete.
So I have 1.3% lead, and our challenge is just straight body fat.
And so being as a body fat challenge is straight body fat, this is completely unfair, not at all fair. And so, for example, if Brian Shaw were to drop himself down to 12% body fat and she had to drop herself lower than 12, that would be very unhealthy. Even competitors at the Miss Olympia bikini, they on average are not below 12% body fat. 12% body fat for a female is excessively lean. Most will have lost their period, have amenorrhea, and so it's not even healthy. And so for her, being as she's already close to 18% body fat, I wouldn't suggest she tries to lose anymore. Perhaps at most 15%, but I would judge it based on, is she in fact getting her period? If her period goes away from over dieting, I think she would have taken it too far.
This is for real hydrostatic weighing. Team Brian, let me know in the comments.
And so personally, I think that Team Brian's going to win. However, I don't really trust the validity of the body fat testing and hydrostatic weighing. And it's very easy to manipulate these results if you're, for example, dehydrated, depending on what you've eaten. If you're eating a lot of gassy foods, for example, beans and high fiber foods, it's going to cause more air to be in your intestines. That's going to make you weigh less, make your body fat go up. And so the test can actually be influenced by not only how much air you have in your lungs, but also on your diet. There are so many different things you need to know about these tests. And so, for example, the first test, you'd weigh yourself in the morning, you're dehydrated. Perhaps you were partying hard than last time, drinking alcohol, and you're very dehydrated. You then do the test at the end of the day, and you re-drink a ton of water. You're eating lots of food. The test is going to say, wow, you put on 10 pounds of muscle in one single day. It's not actually muscle that you're gaining, it's water. The test does not know this. Just want you to know that the test is only as accurate as the person using it, and there are in fact limitations to how accurate this test is based on extremes in data. Brian Shaw is an extreme outlier. He weighs almost 400 pounds, and so ending it here. Subscribe, click the bell button, comment to boost the algorithm. Did you in fact like the video? If you liked it, drop a like, watch one of those two bloops, and of course, the cookbooks, the training books, the Circle Diet book, the Harder Than Last Time clothing line. And until next time, I am out.